Glad to have you back. Now let's delve into our full bulletin. Somalia and the United Nations have launched a multi-donor trust fund to strengthen partnerships between the government and the United Nations and international partners in support of the country's development priorities and achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Somalia and the United Nations have launched a multi-donor trust fund to strengthen partnerships between the government, the United Nations and international partners in the support of the country's development priorities and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. The Somalia Joint Fund, formerly known as Somalia Multi-Partner Trust Fund, with more than $500 million in contributions since 2014, is one of the largest country-level development funds globally, the United Nations said in a statement issued Wednesday evening. Adam Abdelmullah, the Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General and the United Nations Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator for Somalia, said the country-level pooled funds like Somalia Joint Fund are critical for the United Nations' ability to better support the development aspirations of the countries concerned. He said the fund, which was launched in Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia, which also serves as a platform for open and honest dialogue between Somalia and its international partners under the leadership of the government. The Somalia Joint Fund, administered by the UN Multi-Partner Trust Fund Office in New York, seeks to mobilize $60 million annually in the next 3 years to support the most critical and strategic priorities in Somalia through 7 funding windows. Mahmoud Abdurrahman Benebene, Minister of Planning, Investment and Economic Development, said the fund provides the government with a mechanism to ensure international alignment and national priorities, strengthen national ownership of international development assistance, and collectively prioritize and coordinate the use of resources for the best impact. Somali Cabinet Council approved the national policy for Somali youth during its weekly meeting on Thursday in Mogadishu. The policy spanning 2023 to 2030 was presented to the Council by the Ministry of Youth and Sports. This followed a series of dialogues with the regional government bodies, alongside with the development of a cutting-edge digital platform to enable overseas Somali youth to partake in the conversation. Somali Cabinet Council approved the national policy for Somali youth during its weekly meeting on Thursday in Mogadishu. The policy spanning 2023 to 2030 was presented to the Council by the Ministry of Youth and Sports. This followed a series of dialogues with regional government bodies, along with the development of cutting-edge digital platform to enable overseas Somali youth to partake in the conversation. The youth-focused initiative is grounded in 10 pillars. These encompass youth employment, idea generation, education, skills advancement, active participation in societal matters, leadership roles, reconciliation, cooperation and drug abuse prevention and treatment. Minister of Youth and Sports lawmaker Mohamed Barre Mohamud stated that the approval of the national policy for Somali youth will result in the establishment of National Youth Council. Despite the lack of consultation meeting in Puntland, the minister underscored that communication with the Puntland Ministry was maintained. However, the Puntland officials opted against hosting policy consultation meetings in their state. More than 60% of the population in Somalia is under the age of 25, and this group consistently faces obstacles from different sides that prevent them from achieving their ambitions. The two warring factions in the Sudan conflict, Sudan National Army and the Rapid Support Forces, have both agreed to ensure safety of civilians and ensure movement of humanitarian aid. This comes amidst an elusive ceasefire after a week of talks in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where the two sides agreed to sign a short-term ceasefire to create room for further talks. The two warring factions in Sudan conflict, Sudan National Army and the Rapid Support Forces, have both agreed to ensure safety of civilians and ensure movement of humanitarian aid. This comes amidst an elusive ceasefire after a week of talks in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where two sides agreed to sign a short-term ceasefire to create room for further talks. On Thursday, clashes were reported in the Khartoum within Halfaya and Omurdan, the outskirts of the capital, where residents reported hearing warplanes fly above the city. However, neither of the sides has publicly shown signs of agreeing to de-escalate the tension and end the conflict that has been ongoing since last month, threatening to plunge the country into a civil war. Previous ceasefires have been violated, leaving civilians caught in between crossfires and navigating terrifying landscape of firefights and aerial bombardments amidst dwindling food, water, and medical supplies and power outages. According to the senior U.S. Department official, the latest declaration by the two parties in the conflict to extend the ceasefire seek to improve the flow of humanitarian relief and enable restoration of water and electricity services. The official added the mediators also hope to convince the two sides to withdraw fighters from the hospitals and enable burial of those killed in the conflict. The United Nations estimates that over 600 people have been killed and more than 5,000 injured in the fighting. Many have fled Khartoum, Darfur, leading to 700,000 people being internally displaced and 150,000 refugees entering neighboring countries. A number of Somaliland army forces switched sides on Thursday, aligning themselves with the SSC Khartoum forces. The identities of the officers have not been disclosed. However, it's known that they were stationed in the Sama Kaab region and originally hailed from the Sol, Senag, and Ain regions. A number of Somaliland army officers switched sides on Thursday, aligning themselves with the SSC Khartoum forces. The identities of the officers have not been disclosed. However, it is known that they were stationed in Sama Kaab region and originally hailed from the Sol, Senag, and Ain regions. These regions' top traditional clan chief Garad Jama' Garad Ali, along with other officials, extended a warm welcome to the officers in Las Anod town. Garad Ismail expressed satisfaction over the officers recognizing and standing up against the oppression and violence towards the SSC community. Garad Jama acknowledged the officers' strategic importance in the Sama Kaab area. He also encouraged the other officers with familiar ties in the SSC region, currently serving in the Somaliland army, to consider defecting. Garad also called for the president of Somaliland to withdraw his troops from Las Anod and prevent the conflict from escalating, emphasizing that the time for unity between Somaliland and SSC Khartoum forces has ended. Just a day prior to this group defection, Dair Mohammed Ahmed, the Education Commissioner for Somaliland Sol region, also joined the SSC Khartoum movement. He was warmly received by traditional elders including Las Anod Mayor Abdikahin Ali Ismail and military officers. Ahmed said he was committed to aiding the Sol, Senag, and Ain communities in their efforts to reunify with the federal government. Earlier this week, an undisclosed number of defectors, including military commander from Somaliland, joined the SSC Khartoum forces in the Sol region. SSC Khartoum commander Abdi Madobe commended the defect commander and his troops for cooperating with local forces. Dear viewer, it was a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you for tuning in to your #1 station for news and updates. I'm your presenter Abdurrahman Yusuf. That's all we had prepared for you tonight as a desk.